A few years ago, I published a blog post about how to move your Microsoft 365 tenant out of GoDaddy's managed environment, a term referred to as defederation. That post now gets about 3,000 views per month, and I get messages every week from IT admins and business owners saying that article saved us hours of potential work. And honestly, I get why. Because while GoDaddy does do a great job of helping businesses get started quickly with their domain, their email, and Microsoft 365, all in a matter of minutes, when your business matures, you may want more control. And that's where today's video comes in. I'm going to walk you through the 2026 defederation method, the exact process I use to help companies move their tenants under direct Microsoft control or with the CSP provider. My article on my blog is a little outdated, so in today's episode, we're going to walk through this live step by step so you can see how I do this firsthand and watch for any errors I run into so we can update the content together. It's simple, fast, and in some cases, I've seen it done in as little as 10 minutes. Before we dive in, let me be clear. GoDaddy provides an awesome way to get set up with business-ready email and productivity on Microsoft, and they've greatly improved their documentation and support around the defederation process. If you open a ticket with them, they'll actually do that for you if you're more non-technical, but if you're comfortable running a few PowerShell commands, the method I'm going to show you today is actually going to save you some time. I'll link the support article that I'm showing here though in my blog post as part of this video. If you sign up for Microsoft 365 through GoDaddy, it's built for simplicity. You buy a domain, attach email, and in minutes you're collaborating in Outlook, Teams, and OneDrive. But under the hood, GoDaddy federates your domain, meaning authentication and licensing run through their system instead of Microsoft's. That's fine for small teams, but as you scale, you might want to use conditional access, manage devices through Intune, control licensing through your own CSP, or integrate security policies across your environment. Defederation unlocks all that without having to move mailboxes or migrate data. So think of it this way, GoDaddy helps you launch, defederation helps you grow. Here's the checklist we're gonna step through. Done right, this process takes less than an hour, and in some of those rare cases, like I mentioned, people have reported finishing it in about 10 minutes. 10 minutes if you've had enough coffee. Okay guys, so to set the stage here, we're going to walk through my article step by step. Like you see here, I haven't updated it since August of 2024. I still think this will work, but we're just going to update it together so you guys can see me do it live. I've made that video years ago now, so it's a good refresher to go through. I've got a GoDaddy account here with a company name called Turtle Soup that I set up, and this is the best turtle soup you can get here in Denver that I just established a couple days ago. And we're going to go through and actually defederate this tenant and actually see how that goes all the way into, getting access into the regular admin centers within Microsoft. As a call out, again, I will link this article from GoDaddy. If you are non-technical, I suggest you follow this and reach out to their support as part of this. And we'll actually be going through some of the FAQs that they have within here. I thought these were kind of funny to read because it's all the problems that I get questions on quite a bit myself. But we'll go through all the FAQs, such as, if you have Proofpoint, if you have email archiving, what's going to happen with licensing after you cancel, is anything going to be, creating downtime? All of that will be included as part of this as well. All right, so step one, we're going to prepare our end users. Part of this process here is it's going to require a password change for the users as you defederate outside of this process. We'll double check to make sure that's still the case as part of this. And you can reset it to have a temporary password that you provide them. Probably best recommendation versus giving them some plain text password and then having that stick afterwards. It's kind of insecure to deliver it that way. But you can give them a temporary password that they can then reset after the defederation. You want to select the date and time for defederating. I just do this in after hours just because of the support ticket load. You don't want to do this in the middle of the business day. I would say it's not a best practice. And you want to give proper communications about what's going to occur. And then lastly here, they might have activation prompts when you change the licensing from GoDaddy to direct to Microsoft or CSP. And today we're going to, work with direct Microsoft licensing, but the process would be very similar for CSP licensing as part of this, or almost exactly the same. Outside of adding the relationship for the CSP partner, you are going to get the licensing from. But they may also have to sign out and sign back in of their Office applications, such as Outlook in this case. They'll be prompted to re-enter that. We'll see if that actually happens in my ecosystem as well here too as part of this test. This largely though is communicating the change and going through that. We'll go through the password resets here a little bit later, but that would be your very first step. Next step here is becoming the tenant admin in GoDaddy. And so we want this user, in this case, to be an admin user that we're going to run PowerShell with. And so they set up the initial user as an admin user, but this user is redirected to the GoDaddy portal when trying to access the admin tab for going to office.com. So we need to access a true global admin. So let's take a look at that. Within this account here, I've got this in Ross here, or Nicholas at turtlesoup.net, which showcases admin here. But let's go ahead and see if they're actually an admin in the Microsoft portal as a global admin within the tenant. Okay, I'm in another browser here signed in as that Nicholas at turtlesoup.net. You can see that here. I've got this email open from GoDaddy that was auto-generated for this detection of sign-in, which is actually a good security email to send as part of this. But if I go ahead and open up a new tab, I'm going to go to portal.azure.com as I referenced in my document. As part of this will take you to the Azure portal. And this is where, if I've never set up Microsoft MFA, it's got to go ahead and prompt me to set that up because that's a Microsoft requirement to access any admin center. Now you do need to be using multi-factor authentication. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up on there. All right, so we've got that added now. We'll click on done. And then we'll put in this extra information. I'm just gonna skip past this, but I'll put this in and then reach back out when we're on to the next page. Okay, we got through that and now we're here into the Azure portal. You'll click on this ellipsis here on the far left and click on Microsoft Entra ID as part of this. And within here under manage, you can go to users. All right, and so we've got these users in here. Got this Gmail account that also got created actually from another email that I had within there. But this is where we see we have, this admin account in this turtlesoup.net. If I click into the Turtle Soup one and I go into the assigned roles, I am a global administrator. So this might be what you see. If you see that admin and you have access to that account, within your portal as part of this. Otherwise, you could look at this admin account. This is the one I'm referencing in my documentation that you can go and see if you can reset the password on this guy, and then use this account. But since I can access it with the Nicholas at turtlesoup.net, let's go ahead and use that and try that to go ahead and access PowerShell. Now back in the article, we're moved on to remove federation with GoDaddy. Now what I'm recognizing is, when this is completed, we'll have the user that we need to be able to run the PowerShell steps with. But the one thing I'm noticing here is that this is actually going to reset the user password, or that's what was documented before. So that would actually kick me out at that email here that I have. So I want to go ahead actually and pivot back over and get that admin password for that other account as part of this. So I'm back in that admin portal for this user, the admin.net org. This is the GoDaddy, syntax that you'll see with any tenant that's spun up. And go ahead and reset this password. From here, we're going to go ahead and open up an incognito window, go to office.com, click on sign in, and just go ahead and sign in with that admin account. So I'm going to grab that UPN one more time here, which is this net.org address. And then I'll put in our password, which I actually already changed. So it's going to have me log in here. And then this is where I can demonstrate, you're signing with this admin and you'd love to go over to this admin portal. You click to try to open that. And this is where we get redirected back to GoDaddy as part of this. So that's what we're looking to solve for here as part of this federation. What we're doing next, though, if we go back to the support article here, is we're going to move into the section for removing federation with GoDaddy. And be aware, this is where, we're making sure the users have these passwords as part of this, and, they will have access afterwards. So we'll get into that as well, too. But this is where we want to start copying this, and we'll just grab from here to here. This next part is where you're pasting in that PowerShell command. I already went through this just to test this fully, but if we go ahead and rerun that, this is what I just grabbed from that output. You're going to go ahead and need to sign in with your account here. This is where you'd select, the admin account that we just reset the password on and put in that password as part of that. And then it will have you re-authenticate again now for the MG domain commandlet as part of that same account you would sign in with here. And then this will give you these two domains. As you can see here, if I zoom in here on this, you'll notice that the turtlesoup.net is federated, where the Auto Microsoft is managed. We want to change that to managed for all domains. So if you have multiple domains, you will need to set this for all of them. And this is this command that I ran here, which is the turtlesoup.net into the domain ID. This is, if you misspell it, it will fail, or just not do anything as part of that. But you can see after I did that, I reran the get mg domain and domain, and it changed back to manage now. Okay, so now the first thing we want to do is if I go back into this account here with the admin account, I'm going to go ahead and sign out, and then I'll sign back in again, and I'll choose this account one more time, grab my password, and then hypothetically, the admin tab should redirect us to the main Microsoft admin tab here. So we didn't get redirected back to GoDaddy, so that's working fine. As part of that, okay, I've now opened up another incognito window. I'm just going to go to office.com, and I'm going to try to sign in with one of our users here that I did not reset the password on. So let me go ahead and do that. Now I'm getting this weird UI as part of this. See, there's nothing here. Let me just see if there's any console errors or anything. It's getting some weird functionality here. It might be related to the password that I did not change as part of this. So let's see, try to refresh here again. So let's try this. Let's go ahead and reset this user's password using the PowerShell script as part of this, and then we'll see if this actually updates. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this here, which is what we're going to use to connect graph. I'm not going to upload the CSV as part of this example. We're just going to do the one user, but this is the script if you had a list of users and you would just be putting in their user ID, which is, their email address, and then the new password in textual form that you would want to have. Okay, so here in PowerShell, we're going to go ahead and paste in this action here, which is going to install graph if it's not already for you. And I can hit yes here. And then we'll ask you to sign in again with that admin account, which I did already in the previous session. So it just automatically signed me in. And then here, this is where you would put in, the syntax here, which is user ID is Nicholas, and their documentation states, you can use a UPN instead of an ID. You got a temporary password for the user, but you'll notice here that I get this unexpected input parameters as part of that. So this is basically a limitation where as a user yourself, if you sign in and consent, you could reset your own password with just this commandlet, but you cannot do so as another user within there. So I'm the admin account trying to reset Nicholas, not allowing me to do that. So the alternative approach here is if I paste this in, so I probably will update this too. You've got this body or this object here for password profile, which has that in it. It says force password change on next sign in is true. And then I'm using this update mg user now for this user, and then I'm providing the password profile. So let's see if this works. That went through okay, so let's go ahead and test that out. So we'll try to sign in now again for this user. So we'll go ahead and put in our legacy password. That should error out, which is expected. So now let's put in that new password, and it should ask me to change it as part of this. Great, that looks good. So now we're getting past the sign in there. So it does still look like you need to reset every user's password in order for them to sign in. Now I'm logged in. Let's get this out of here. Gone, not admin, but apps, and then Outlook. And here we are. We're signed back in. My email is still here. There's no data deletion or anything like that. Okay, so the next part here is adding the new provider and provision licensing here. So if you're working with the CSP provider, they need to provide you a link to grant consent for them to be able to provision licenses into your tenant. We're going to go ahead and do these steps here under the Microsoft Direct formula, which is just purchasing licensing within the portal. Okay, so here I'm still signed in as that user, Nicholas Ross here. I'm going to go to the admin center. Should be able to access it as well because he was a global admin in the tenant. You do need to be a global admin signing in here, which would be that admin account, or in this case, the one user that I showed that had that as well. Underneath the Microsoft portal, you'll expand, just see the billing section here, and then you can go into purchase services. Now, this is where you want to purchase a service that's like to like from Microsoft. So that depends on what you're on right now with GoDaddy as an example, but likely, you would want to move into something like Business Premium as an example of this, or Business Standard as part of that, because right now you can actually tell by going into the active users, and I can see actually that I just actually have Exchange Online Plan 1. So you'll want to go in here first and see what the actual license is assigned to the users underneath here, and you'll be able to see that in text here. And I think if you go under your products, you'll be able to see it here as well. So Exchange Online Plan 1, I thought this was actually a business plan, so it's weaker than I even thought as far as the security goes on the product. But then, you can go in, and in this case, it shows here our primary solution provider is GoDaddy. I expand this and just search for Exchange Online. But this is the plan here that I'd be purchasing to replace that. If you do go ahead and buy a different license, that's okay. What you would want to do as to purchase it here, I'm not going to go through the full checkout experience, is you're going to go to active users and you're going to select the users that you want to assign licenses to. And you'll go into this manage product licenses and just click on replace. And then you'll choose the replacement license. So you'll effectively swap out that license for the other plan that you want to designate. If you're one-to-one, it will auto-assign to the users as part of this process as well too. You don't have to reassign the licenses in that way. It's only if you're changing the subscription type as part of this. Now we're at the very last part here, which is removing GoDaddy as a delegated admin. I would love if you guys could comment, on this piece of it here. I haven't seen this in quite some time, but I would want to be careful about this. I would always recommend doing this step as far as removing, their rights in the tenant after you've provisioned the licensing and before canceling your subscription with them. As part of this, ideally you want to align, the renewal date of your GoDaddy with the renewal, or the procurement, I should say, of the licenses that you're getting direct with Microsoft or with your CSP. But you could have that overlap, and that's fine, as far as what we did there. But let's now go into that admin portal and just view, removing them as a delegated admin. Back here where I was in the admin center, and I'll go here under the settings and I'll go under partner relationships. This is where I have GoDaddy here that's active as part of this. This has got an auto extend relationship turned on as part of that as well. And then you go under roles here, and then this is where you can click on remove roles. And this is removing their access out of this tenant. So I click on yes all the way. And then you get the success message that says GoDaddy delegated admin roles have been removed. And I can, remove the auto extension. That doesn't actually work after you remove the roles because they don't even have access to the relationship anymore as part of this. So that's the part here you would do on the admin portal. The other piece here that I'll be updating the guide on is something that was recently brought to my attention as well, where if you go to intro.microsoft.com, GoDaddy actually has an enterprise application that exists within here too that they could use to regain access to the tenant. If you go under enterprise apps here, and you won't see a list here with any of the GoDaddy enterprise apps here, you'll need to X out this application type filter as part of this, and then you can go ahead and you'll potentially notice it with this identifier within here as part of this. If we scroll down this list, it's a little bit too many apps within this portal to basically show, but if we go and we look for Partner Center, we search for Partner Center within here, there's going to be one called Partner Center Web App as part of this, and you'll notice this identifier URI has the GoDaddy URL within it. If I click into it here, you'll notice that we have the properties. If I go under that here, we have this homepage URL, just this local host as part of this, but under the permissions section, we can see that there is quite a lot of permissions that they have as part of this app registration or this enterprise app, and effectively they could and have and cited it in a Reddit post, right, to get access back into the tenant potentially, and create some more right activity in not a malicious way, but in a way that you would probably not want if you were doing this defederation. So the thing that you'll want to do here is go back under properties and just simply click on delete and delete this out of the portal. Now this last piece is extremely important. That's changed since the last time that I did this video and what I'm going to update here in the blog, but effectively, I'm saying here you go into GoDaddy and cancel the renewal. I won't go through that in depth. You can go into your subscriptions and cancel that. But one of the things that you need to pay attention to is the plan that you purchased from GoDaddy. So if I go into my renewals here, I've got this M365 email plus with security. And if I go back here to my account in my profile, go back a little bit more here to the email page. If I'm on the overview, if I scroll down into the users here, you'll notice that this says powered by Proofpoint. And this is something that's come up multiple times since I created this, but effectively GoDaddy's partnering with Proofpoint to do email security filtering with the mail that's going on. And so what that means is that the MX records, where your mail flow is going, is actually pushing into Proofpoint. And so if you were to cancel this, your mail flow would actually stop and you would have downtime. So it's extremely important you pay attention to that and take a look at what plan they're on. I'm showing up on the screen now, what you see whenever you go to sign up for GoDaddy now. These are a couple of those plans, but be aware of that because you do need to make additional changes as part of this whenever you do this before you cancel those licenses with GoDaddy. So let's actually go back to the portal so I can show you guys that firsthand in the tenant that I spun up. Okay, so I'm back here in the portal and I went under the settings section here on the left, and then I go under domains, and you'll notice here the main domain that I have published is the turtlesoup.net. It says incomplete setup, so I'm going to go ahead and click into it and go into continue setup. Now this is where, that you can go through the experience. If you still have your domain with GoDaddy here, you can go in and actually will auto update the settings for you as far as the DNS records that you'll want to go in and do. But you can also manually add them as well too. So this is where you're going to need to change the MX record here, ensure that you have a proper SBF record and the CNAME record as part of this. And then if you're using Intune and configuring DKIM, I'm not going to go through all of that in this video here, but if we pause here and go back to GoDaddy, if I'm in GoDaddy, if I go under the domain section and go under DNS, I can click on or just view these records right here. All these are different records, but you'll notice here these MX records are the ones that are directing towards Proofpoint as an example. So you'll want to update the first one here to redirect towards Microsoft, and then you'll just delete the other two, out of here as well too. So that will redirect your email flow, back to Microsoft specifically as part of that. And this is again why you would want to do this outside of business hours. With GoDaddy, that will propagate pretty quickly as part of that, and you can send some couple of test emails to make sure email's flowing okay. But that's just an additional consideration that you should go into and planning that out. So definitely, when you go to these in the future, read the whole article because I'll update it with this information. But that's really healthy to know as well. Finally here, before we get into the FAQs, the other thing that's been added since I last did this video was the ability to rename SharePoint URLs. So one of the things that GoDaddy does is when they spin up this tenant, they spin it up with this, auto-generated net.org and then this numeric value, as part of that. So all of your SharePoint sites, if you're using SharePoint, will say that. And previously, you couldn't really overcome that. That's why people still might have done a migration to another tenant. But with this, you can now, click this link. I'm not going to go through that as part of this video either, but it's additional PowerShell that you need to run into the tenant to rename the SharePoint URLs, and you can now do that to make sure it looks like your primary domain as part of that. Okay, so not quite 10 minutes, but you can see how you could get to that over time. Let's go through some of the common FAQs that I get asked a lot here. What about MX records and Proofpoint? We went through that just a few minutes ago with the MX record that you need to change if you're on Proofpoint, just to make sure that mail flow gets redirected back to Microsoft. You're canceling that subscription and not setting up Proofpoint as a direct subscription in the future. Can I rename my SharePoint URL after defederation? This is one I mentioned that previously you couldn't do, now you can do with PowerShell. I'll link that here in the blog post. Do I lose any email or Teams data? No, if you're doing this defederation, it's not actually a migration, so you won't run into any considerations with loss of data. But what about archiving and backup? This is something that you see as an email add-on in GoDaddy. And so all of these products are actually going to be canceled as part of your subscription canceling, and the data behind them actually will get removed, unless the only exception today is with archiving with Barracuda, because that's who GoDaddy's using behind the scenes. So if you move your archive directly to Barracuda, that's how you would be able to keep that. Otherwise, that data will be removed. Can I still use my GoDaddy domain for DNS? Absolutely. They're one of the better DNS providers out there for making changes and having them propagate really quickly. So that's going to be a separate subscription, obviously, that you have with GoDaddy moving forward. I've seen that this might cause other problems with other IDPs, such as Okta. Is that true? I think this is a common point of confusion. I've definitely seen this a lot in Reddit posts. I actually went and tested this out myself and created an Okta account and federated it
with that account I was just showing you here in this video, and everything worked as expected, and I refederated with Okta, was able to sign in using their authentication versus Microsoft. So I think it definitely takes you, performing all the steps we've outlined here, removing GoDaddy as that DDEP relationship within the tenant. But let me know in the comments if you guys are seeing otherwise. And then the very last question here, what happens to existing licensing during the transition? There's usually a lot of confusion here because even after you cancel, the licenses will remain in your portal and still be visible for some time. They'll eventually just fall off as part of that, but you're not actually getting billed if you've canceled everything in the GoDaddy portal. So use that as your source of truth, whether to say that the licenses are active or they're not. And make sure, like I mentioned earlier, that you have the other licenses either direct or with the CSP active and assigned to those users. GoDaddy's made it incredibly easy for small businesses to start with Microsoft 365, and they've added great documentation and support for when you're ready to move. But if you want the fastest, most direct path to full control, this PowerShell method that I showed you in this video is the way to go. Whether it takes you 10 minutes or an hour, the end result is the same. Your tenant, your data, your control. That's everything I had for you guys in this video. I'll see you next week.